The Forgotten Highway.
Chapter 1. Echoes from Darkness. I never believed in ghosts or supernatural beings until I started noticing things moving on their own at night, strange shadows flickering in the corner of my eye, and hearing whispers when I was alone in our apartment. It wasn't long after we moved into this old building on the outskirts of town that it all began to happen. My boyfriend Matt dismissed my concerns as paranoia brought on by stress from changing jobs, but deep down, he knew I was right. The house seemed to have a life of its own, shadows shifting and dancing like living darkness, as if they had a mind of their own. I tried ignoring it, hoping the sounds were just the old pipes creaking or my imagination running wild with the stress of settling into a new place. But the vision started soon after, waking me up in the dead of night with vivid scenes playing out before my eyes. Streaks of crimson staining my skin like someone had splashed blood across my body. Matt claimed I was having nightmares, but I know what I saw. The whispers grew louder each evening, a raspy voice murmuring words that sounded like "find me" and "let go." It wasn't until the night I woke up covered in dark stains that reality blurred with nightmare. They weren't just any bloodstains. They looked fresh and vivid under the moonlight streaming through my window. Matt was skeptical as ever when he found me drenched and trembling in our bed, but a look of genuine fear crept into his eyes for a moment before he masked it. It was then that I realized the apartment had more secrets than just dust collecting in every corner. Our place wasn't haunted. Something else was here. Desperate for answers, I delved into its history, scouring old records and newspapers about this building from decades past. My research led me to a tenant who died under mysterious circumstances many years ago, an older man named Arthur. His life had been cut short in the apartment, but no body was ever found. One night, as I huddled over a worn book at our kitchen table, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone crawling on the floor above us, moving from room to room like skeletal fingers tracing along the ceiling. Matt laughed it off once more when I woke him up screaming. He couldn't see or hear anything. In his eyes, my fears had become a joke. Yet, something was real, and I intended to find out what. Days passed with increased sightings of ghostly apparitions. Shadowy silhouettes darting in the corner of my vision. Flickering lights that never truly illuminated anything concrete. The unmistakable feeling of being watched while showering under an otherwise empty bathroom. Matt's distance grew thicker than the atmosphere around us, and I couldn't bear it anymore. I confided in Mrs. Jenkins, our elderly neighbor, who always seemed to know more about this place than she let on. Her eyes clouded with a mix of fear and warning as she spoke of the malevolent spirit rumored to haunt these halls. Arthur's restless soul seeking revenge. But she wouldn't provide more without a promise of silence from Matt. His mother, his wife. It consumed him, she whispered, consumed, coming out like a sigh before she shut the door behind me with an eerie thud. Consumed? It couldn't be related to Arthur's death unless he was involved in something dark. Each night became more unbearable than the last. I'd wake up to find Matt gone and return to find him sitting on the couch, staring at nothing or something outside. His lack of response when I approached made my heart race faster with every step. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant and detached. "I don't know what's going on with you, Sarah. You're scaring me." His words felt hollow under the flickering dim light. Shadows swirled in the corner as we stood facing each other. A dark shape, almost human-like, but not quite. "You have to believe me," I urged, gesturing wildly towards the shifting shapes. Matt took my hand and pulled me close, a reassuring embrace that only made me tremble more. "I'll look into it if it makes you happy." His lips brushed against my ear as he whispered, "But no, I won't find anything. I let go of his hand reluctantly, feeling like we were losing each other in the process. The next night, while Matt slept soundly, I decided to investigate further. I donned a thick coat and ventured outside under the moonless sky towards the musty basement entrance. Rusty steps creaked beneath my feet as I descended into darkness. Dust danced around me in faint light from my phone's screen. In this dank space, whispers turned to raspy words again. Find me now coupled with a menacing laugh that sounded like ice scraping stone. Shadows coalesced before me, tall and gaunt with eyes the color of coal. I stumbled back. They were watching. My phone slipped from my fingers and landed on the cement floor with an echo that reverberated in the stillness. A scream caught in my throat as the shadows converged, their dark forms shifting into recognizable human form. Arthur stood before me, his face a death mask of pale skin and sunken eyes. "Let go," he hissed. In that moment, I believed it was him, trapped between worlds, his spirit hungry to reclaim life. I scrambled up the stairs, slamming the door behind me, but couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched from both sides of reality. Matt awoke with my breathless gasps, and I forced a calm tone. "You're shaking again." In that moment, our relationship hung by a thread as thin as a spider web. Chapter 2. Shadows amidst light. Days blurred into nights spent researching, but every clue led to more questions than answers. I couldn't tell Matt the truth. The whispers grew louder in my dreams now, an insidious voice whispering phrases like, "Let me free and you're mine." Bloodstains marred my skin, staining my clothing when I woke up. I wore T-dot shirts and jeans for days at a time, afraid to shower. Matt distanced himself further, unable or unwilling to comprehend what was happening. Our conversations became stilted and brief. The connection we once had began unraveling like an old photograph left out too long. It wasn't until that fateful night when I caught him standing in our bedroom doorway with a shadowy figure behind him that dread crystallized into certainty. His mother's spirit? The air was thick and heavy, filled with more than dust. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Mrs. Jenkins gave me Arthur's old belongings, relics from another time. His letters spoke of his wife's untimely passing while his mother did law harbored a secret. As the words danced across pages stained by years, an eerie glow illuminated them. The mother had her own demons. I stared at a sepia photograph. A woman who bore no resemblance to our neighbor. Arthur's wife, or something else entirely. I didn't realize when the photograph transitioned into life before my eyes. The woman in it was dead, yet she watched me with eyes both longing and menacing under the attic hatch. In the night, shadows moved on their own, swirling patterns that resembled hands trying to break free of the floorboards. They reached for my door, an unseen presence I could feel as much as see. Your mind echoed in my mind when sleep became elusive. Shadows clawed at the wood. They wanted out, and Arthur was no longer alone. That same evening while he worked late, I entered his mother's attic, a musty closet filled with moth-eaten coats and the photograph on her lap, her pale face watching. The woman turned to me, eyes black as coal. A scream tore through my throat just as Arthur appeared behind us. She didn't move. I did, bolting down the stairs in frantic silence until I reached the safety of our room. Matt's eyes betrayed his own confusion. A man on the edge. "Sarah, maybe it's time to leave." Leave and what? Run or face whatever was coming for me. The photograph rested against my chest when he returned, Arthur's letters gone. "I believe you," I said finally, my voice barely audible above the howling wind outside our windowless walls. Believe in what? His words dripped with skepticism as he approached me slowly. You're spiraling into madness. I showed him proof, photographs and documents, but it was his face that turned a sickly shade of gray when I opened my arms, revealing the woman from above. The attic's occupants slipped through us and down the stairs like specters. She stood by his side, no longer dead or alive, her gaze on me. That night, Arthur was there too, his face contorted in pain. For an eternity of an instant, the three of them watched us. The woman, Arthur and she, skin stretched across her skull, as if death was a cruel joke. With each appearance, distance between us widened. They spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen. Let go echoed through my dreams. Shadows coalesced into a form that leaned over me while I slept. A gaunt figure with sunken eyes and skin like cold ash. Matt found his sleeping wife covered in bloodstains. I'd fallen prey to madness. In the morning, he was gone when I woke up alone and disheveled, leaving behind an envelope and a note that made my heart stutter in my chest. She's coming. The attic room reeked of decay when I finally gathered the courage to return. Mrs. Jenkins sat hunched over her table, eyes once again filled with regret. You have your proof, but you'll never leave. I opened the envelope. A newspaper clipping and photographs showing an old Arthur. His wife had been accused of witchcraft, hung for crimes against nature during her life. He'd consumed them both until they died in this very house. My skin crawled as her spirit moved through my dreams. It was then the photograph left me at night. Arthur's letters were gone from my bed. In that attic room, I found her, bones barely holding together with tattered fabric clinging to a body long dead. They said I was mine now too. The woman who'd once haunted us, Mrs. Jenkins. And she watched from shadows I could hardly perceive. I returned home as the last rays of sunlight faded. Matt's face when he saw me. His eyes had seen things man wasn't meant to see. The attic door slammed shut behind us, sealing my fate in this house until we were consumed too. A picture frame showed her, an old black and white photograph with a smile long dead before the lens was snapped. Arthur appeared on the landing as Mrs. Jenkins' body tumbled down the stairs, her face a death mask of bloodstains, skin peeled away, exposing bones beneath. A letter clutched in gnarled fingers landed on his chest. Chapter 3. Beyond Descent. They came for us both now, the woman and Arthur, their hunger insatiable. Their presence echoed through my mind as I drifted off to sleep, waking with Matt long gone. He'd been taken. Mrs. Jenkins lay crumpled in her chair, eyes blacker than coal, a soul trapped between worlds. The house had become home to death, and she watched. I left the attic room behind, bloodstains on my hands and his mother's face before me like a ghostly portrait. He was mine too. We'd be consumed together. His gaze locked onto mine, blacker than any well. I believe you. Their hunger had taken everything.